Also yesterday, President Trump blamed the Obama administration and also an increase in testing when asked by reporters yesterday about the recent surge in cases across the country.
If you know, Biden and Obama stopped their testing. They just stopped it. You probably know that. I'm sure you don't want to report it. But they stopped testing right in the middle. They just went, no more testing, and on a much lesser problem than the problem that we have. We test more than anybody by far. And when you test, you create cases. So we've created cases. I can tell you some countries, they test when somebody walks into a hospital sick or walks into maybe a doctor's office, but usually a hospital. That's the testing they do, so they don't have cases. Whereas we do, we have all of these cases. So, you know, it's a double-edged sword.
It's not entirely clear what Obama-era testing program Trump was referring to. Let's bring in politics editor for the Daily Beast, Sam Stein, and White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour, Yamiche Alcindor. Yamiche, in terms of, I mean, we're going to get to the effort to discredit Dr. Fauci in just a moment. But it does leave us with, if they find a way to discredit him, it looks like it's backfiring. If they find a way to do so, is the president going to be our scientist in chief? Because literally everything he says about the coronavirus seems to be a bit off, if that's not an understatement.
There are obviously multiple examples of the president saying things that are just plain wrong about the coronavirus.
Right.
I think the president is seeking to be not just the commander-in-chief, but the chief scientist in this country. He's telling Americans all over the country, believe me over all the other people that you're talking to, including your own local officials, your own governor. In this case, the president said in March, anyone who wants a test can get a test. It wasn't true then. It's not true now. It continues to not be true. And he's the only one in the administration who's talking about testing as a double-edged sword. Obviously, people want to know who has the coronavirus because that is critical to tracing it and critical to stopping it. But what we see in President Trump is really someone who's weighing the political calculations, and he's saying, look, the best thing for my re-election campaign, the best thing for my administration is for people to at least feel like things are normal. And as a result, you see him pushing for schools to be back open. You see him pushing for states to go back open. The problem is now is that when you see a governor like Ron DeSantis in my home state of Florida listening to the president, Ron DeSantis took a victory lap saying, look, everyone thought things were going to be terrible in Florida. They aren't. And then fast forward, we are now in a situation where Florida is the new epicenter and people are terrified, including Republicans. So I think President Trump is going to continue to take this political risk, but it is just that. It's a risk, and he's leaning on the fact that he can get reelected by trying to put the coronavirus in the rearview mirror.
So Dr. Fauci was, in fact, at the White House yesterday for a scheduled meeting with Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. That's according to a White House official and a person close to Dr. Fauci. The official telling NBC News the chat was a, quote, good meeting, good conversation. Both sources confirmed Dr. Fauci did not meet with President Trump. Dr. Fauci recently has said he was not briefed and has not been briefed by the president in at least 2 months and has not seen him in person since early June. Yet in advance of that meeting, White House social media director and Deputy Chief of Staff for Communications Dan Scavino publicly mocked Dr. Fauci, sharing a cartoon of the top U.S. infectious disease expert depicted as a faucet on social media. In a message accompanying the cartoon, Scavino promised to publicly disagree with Fauci, while suggesting the top public health official had voiced disagreement cowardly through leaks to the social media. This on top of the news that President Trump allies provided NBC News and other news outlets with an opposition research-style memo listing nearly a dozen past comments, some taken out of context by Dr. Fauci. Despite all of this, President Trump flatly denied reports that his administration is attempting to discredit Dr. Fauci, as did the White House press secretary.
I have a very good relationship with Dr. Fauci. I've had for a long time, right from the beginning. I find him to be a very nice person. I don't always agree with him. I get along with him very well. I like him personally.
There's no opposition research being dumped to reporters. We were asked a very specific question by the Washington Post, and that question was, President Trump noted that Dr. Fauci had made some mistakes, and we provided a direct answer to what was a direct question. Dr. Fauci and the president have always had a very good working relationship.
More on that in a moment. The Washington Post Greg Sargent points out, quote, all this has really accomplished is to unleash intensified media scrutiny of the tortured relationship between Trump and Fauci. The result, a spate of fresh reporting on that relationship, reporting that only illustrates Trump's pathologies with new depth and vividness. That's from the Washington Post. So, Stan Stein, let's be clear about what happened as you listened to Kayleigh McEnany yesterday. White House officials on background talked to several reporters pointing out Dr. Fauci's inaccuracies over the last several months and did put out a document that looked to all of us who cover politics like an opposition research document about Dr. Fauci. And now Dan Scavino, who runs social media at the White House, just out in the open, put his name on it, attacking Dr. Fauci in the middle of this crisis as it explodes.
Yeah, who are you going to trust on a pandemic? A guy who's a famous infectious disease expert or the White House social media director? You know, it's a tough one here. And yeah, this is just a classic case of Trump scapegoating. And it's, you know, obviously it's bizarre in its tendencies, but this is what the president does. He looks at this problem as a PR problem, and he wants to cast blame elsewhere. Fauci has been off on a few of his earlier predictions, but not even remotely as bad as some of the top White House officials. I mean, keep in mind, it was only a couple of weeks ago that Mike Pence penned an op-ed saying there would be no second wave. And the problem that Anthony Fauci faces is that he's not willing to paint rosy pictures about the current state of the pandemic. He tells it like it is. And for the administration that's trying to reopen the economy and reopen the schools and downplay the severity of the crisis, that is problematic. But, you know, this is the administration that does look through everything as a PR problem. And I just, you know, I go back to the president's comments on testing as the primary example. I don't understand if he actually believes that if you just had fewer tests, this thing would go away. I mean, if we had 10 pregnant women but administered 5 pregnancy tests, we wouldn't have half the births. Obviously, this makes no sense. But he keeps going back to this as if this is the elixir to the issue at hand. And as long as he has that mindset that if we just, you know, buried our heads in the sand, this wouldn't be a big deal, then you're going to have him butt heads with people like Anthony Fauci and try to cast blame on Anthony Fauci because he doesn't want to hear the actual reality of it. He doesn't want to know the actual numbers of it. And so that's where we are. We're at a point where the president's trying to find a scapegoat for his own failures.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.